Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth episode of our LinkedIn Live video series, Breaking New Ground. Topic being Future of FinTech in the Post-COVID-19 New Normal. My name is Sanjay Prasad and I head BFSI Sales at MoEngage. Before we start, I would like to share a few housekeeping details. One, of course, that you can follow this conversation on hashtag Breaking New Ground and share it with your network as well. Second, this being a live broadcast, send us your question in the comment section and we'll take those up. We'll take those questions in the end of the live broadcast. Let's get started. Past couple of days have seen a complete upheaval in where we buy things, how we pay for them, and this new normal that we are talking about has led to huge shift in consumer behavior and expectations. Business like Razorpay, all the fintechs who have adopted to this new shift have definitely benefited. Today, with physical businesses closed, much of the population still being asked to stay at home, we found ourselves in unprecedented situation. As a result, the growing acceptance and adoption of digital payments, a trend which was very much strong in APAC and in India, has seen years of progression in just matter of this couple of months. And today, that's exactly what we're going to discuss: how the economic and health challenges are impacting the fintech industry. Without any further ado, I would like to welcome a speaker, Mr. Vednarayan Vedantam, who heads SMB business practice, covering sales and marketing for Razorpay, one of India's top fintech brands. Welcome, Ved. Ved,
so what I would introduction and a big hello to all of our viewers. Very good afternoon. Wherever you are, hope you're all safe and healthy.
Great. So, Ved, as you know, we have a lot of audience interested to hear about this conversation, and I think more questions will come up if they really actually come to know more detail of your profile, your background. So, if you can just quickly help us with that, what you do.
Yeah, sure. So, as you mentioned, I take care of the SMB business practice at Razorpay, and I think the SMB ecosystem in India is at a very, very, very interesting inflection point, especially in light of what COVID has brought to the table, and that's something that we will talk through as we go along in the session today. Prior to this, I've led marketing for multiple e-commerce brands. Also happened to be a marketing mentor working with various early stage startup acceleration programs, quite a few TIE chapters and a few other acceleration programs. I also happen to be a visiting faculty member working with a few, IM institutes across the country where I teach digital marketing, influencer marketing, mobile marketing, etc. So very excited to be here. Thank you once again for the opportunity.
And I'm sure we're going to gain a lot of knowledge from you with this kind of, experience and insights that we can get from you. Great. Thanks. So, following this outbreak, there has been a significant increase, as we know, in the number of digital payments. Fintech in India, which is expected to grow to $92 billion, if I'm not wrong, by 21, comprising of wealth tech, payments, lending, and insurtech. So digital payments have been the flag bearer of the Indian fintech space, starting, of course, in 2010 when India launched its first-time real-time payment system, IMPS. Then introduced UPI in 2016. Today, there are 375 payment startups in the country, like mobile, digital wallets, gateways, POS, mobile POS, all comprising to 50% of the payment startups in India. So, Ved, here is my question to you. What are some of the interesting trends and insights about how India has fared in the adoption of digital payments? That is one. And how is Razorpay adapting to this?
That's a very interesting question, Sanjay. And at Razorpay, we believe that we have a very good vantage point. We do have a ringside seat, aisle seat, so to speak, and which essentially helps us get a very good perspective of what's actually happening with the entire SMB and the startup ecosystem in India. Because we often think of Razorpay internally within the organization as an index fund, so to speak, which is built on top of the entire SMB and startup ecosystem in India. So essentially, and which goes back to my earlier point of Razorpay having a vantage point, because we are essentially a platform that has a full perspective of which are the categories, which are the sectors, for example, which are seeing an upsurge in terms of incoming payments, which are the categories and sectors, for example, which are seeing an upsurge in terms of payouts, because we are essentially an end-to-end money movement platform, right? We allow businesses to be able to receive funds, which has been a traditional offering. We also allow businesses to be able to offer we also offer business banking solutions to businesses, wherein we allow businesses to be able to pay out funds as well. So having said that, the last 2-3 months have brought on a lot of winds of change. It's been very interesting. Something that we have noticed is the fact that the second half of March and April were obviously tough months for the entire SMB ecosystem and for the whole country and the economy overall, which goes without saying. But what we did observe, which was very interesting, was the fact that despite this, both in the months of March and in the month of April, we saw some significantly record-breaking number of new SMB merchants which were actually going live for the first time ever. And one of the interesting data points that we have at Razorpay is the fact that most of our new merchant acquisitions, right, new customer acquisition. So from a Razorpay's perspective, at least in the SMB context, a new customer essentially is a new business which starts to receive payments through Razorpay. Most of them, we're not just moving people over from the competition. Most of them are fresh additions to the entire digital ecosystem. So most of these businesses are actually looking to receive payments for the first time ever in their entire lifetime. That's the majority of the fresh acquisitions we get, which is a very, very healthy sign for the overall fintech ecosystem in India, because it means that the pie itself is growing and there is room for multiple players to innovate and take large shares of the pie. Right. And it is not a small or a shrinking pie for sure. That is one data point which I think is very interesting. And the other thing, going back to the point that I was making earlier, that we've seen a huge upsurge in terms of fresh merchant acquisition, even during the time of lockdown 1.0, and even during the time when the initial portions of lockdown were happening. And that essentially attests to the fact that our entrepreneurial energy in the country is still intact. And traditionally at Razorpay, e-commerce as a category has been a traditional breadwinner, right? Most of the SMBs and startups that sign up at Razorpay, not most, I would say a material percentage, a significant or a material percentage of, it's not a majority, but it is the single biggest contributor, has been from e-commerce, right? E-commerce marketplaces. But for the first time, because of COVID, we saw e-commerce was no longer the number one, understandably so. But we saw a few categories which had seen a significant upsurge. So although e-commerce went down, a few categories took its place and made sure that at an overall level, we were still able to come up with record-breaking numbers in terms of new merchant acquisition. These categories were edtech, as you would imagine, because more people are obviously looking to learn online, upskill online, reskill online, and so on. The other thing was health tech. And the third thing was gaming. And this is for obvious reasons. All of these categories saw a tremendous upsurge. The other category which also saw an upsurge, but I'm not very sure if that will sustain, is the entire category of NGOs, which essentially are powering COVID donations. But that was more a seasonal thing, I would imagine, at least for the sake of the country. I hope that doesn't sustain for the rest of the year. But these were three categories which were on a tremendous upswing.
And any numbers when you say tremendous fresh merchant acquisition?
So March, April, and May, all of them have been record-breaking months. Last month, and I'm touching wood when I say this, was our highest ever in terms of fresh merchant acquisition. We broke the record that we had set in April, and in April we broke the record that we had set in March. We internally use this term called as churn, right? For like a lot of SaaS companies do as well, and I'm sure you guys possibly use churn as a metric. It talks about in a given 30-day time frame how many merchants actually did not receive any payment through your ranks. And in most cases, the reasons for churn are outside of our control. right? Because the
Okay.
business is shut down or there are larger macroeconomic forces at play. And we saw
Right.
that number, which actually trended to an all-time high figure both in March and April. But in May, we've seen some early signs of revival, right? That number has actually gone down. It's not as low as what it was in the months of Jan and Feb, but it is getting there. It is significantly better than what it was in March and April. So it's not just fresh acquisition. Even the retained cohort of merchants, that's also doing very well. And the other thing which is also interesting is we also internally measure this metric, which is called revival, right? People who had previously churned, who you assumed had previously had teething problems with their business, they were actually coming back to life. That was also a very encouraging sign in May. So a lot of these essentially, in my view, are essentially lead indicators which are pointing to very strong signals that the SMB ecosystem is on its path to recovery as we crystal ball gaze towards the rest of the year.
Great, great. So in fact, my next question, thanks for those insights, about the fresh merchants not being the typical e-commerce, but, ed tech, health tech, etc. Now, my next question is in the same direction. Obviously, this means more of fintech apps getting active, more increased usage of apps. And this we have seen significantly rise since 2020, a huge surge in the last week of March and an increase in spending on BFSI apps in India. I mean, like this was, of course, one of the reports with MoEngage plus Apptopia had, released. In fact, from report perspective, I also was reading to one of the, EY Global FinTech Adoption Index 2019, which said that India's fintech adoption rate is 87% as compared to the global rate of 64%. Interestingly, the advantages of this association have never been, better thrown in a sharp relief as strongly as during the COVID-19 crisis. I was reading another an analysis released by NPCI, in fact, just few hours back on social media, where it said that in May alone, there were 123 crore transactions with 2.18 lakh crore processed in May, which is much, much higher compared to April, which was like 24% higher in volumes, 45% higher in transactions, and again, equaling to what they did in March. Ved, my question to you right now is, what are the key changes in the industry, and consumer behavior that is driving this massive fintech adoption?
So there are multiple things at play, Sanjay. I think one of the biggest things is people are actually beginning, and COVID essentially has proved to be. Obviously, it's a huge human disaster across the world. But one of the things that it has resulted in is the fact that it has kind of reduced the entire digital divide, so to speak, and people's inertia towards using digital payments. It's actually acted as a lever which has actually helped people overcome that inertia in a lot of different cases. And one of a couple of data points actually attest to this. Data points from China that we have seen, which actually managed to successfully overcome COVID. What we've actually seen is that in the post-COVID world, the fintech apps and the fintech companies and the fintech platforms and the digital payment platforms actually came out stronger. They actually started doing significantly higher volumes of business as compared to the pre-COVID states. That's something which is very interesting. The other data point that we've also seen is a lot of the new merchant acquisition that I spoke about. These are not fly-by-night operators, right? Most of them are actually showing very strong, sticky businesses, right? We are actually seeing, for example, something that we internally measure is of the cohort of new merchants that we acquire every single month, how much of gross merchandising value, how much of payment volume do they actually pull through the Razorpay ecosystem? And that is at an all-time high, even at a per merchant level, even at a unitized level. And that's something which is a very encouraging sign for us as a business and for the overall ecosystem. Essentially, what this means is the fact that a lot of these new merchants who are coming on board are actually selling products which have achieved some kind of PMF. Right, and their consumers are actually willing to pay for their solutions, their product offerings online, and they're willing to do so in a significantly higher fashion than what they were doing earlier, which to me is extremely interesting and an extremely positive sign. So these should be some of the data points that essentially attest to the fact that consumers, one is obviously COVID, which has helped people overcome their inertia towards digital payments. That's something that's really helped. The other data point is the new merchant GMV numbers that I was talking about, that which is at an all-time high. The other very interesting thing that we have started observing is the fact that we are seeing more and more number of, which essentially attests to the point number one that I mentioned. The other data point is the fact that we are seeing significantly higher volumes of traffic and in terms of merchants who are actually coming on board from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, tier 5 and below in India, who are actually using the Razorpay platform, both eventual consumers of the merchants and actual merchants from these respective tier 3, 4, 5 cities, which is something which is very, very interesting again a very encouraging sign for the overall SMB entrepreneurial ecosystem in India.
So yeah, so I think so. You're giving a lot of emphasis on people moving away from the existing inertia because of the COVID situation, stronger digital adoption, learning from countries like China, where post-COVID, it's coming out more stronger. And specifically from India perspective, it's a very positive point takeaway that you're saying that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities are the one where both consumers as well as your merchants are seen to be increasing large in number. Great, thanks. So now, in fact, this tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities which you said, and we are speaking of inertia. Now, from that perspective, I will say now, and COVID-19 has actually led to a completely different way how we as a society is operating, functioning or working. And in this whole thing, like you spoke about edtech, you spoke about health tech and other gaming technology, etc. And digital technologies have shown its value across the board for all demographics, adding resilience, and importantly, it's adding resilience to our economy, enabling alternative working, providing means to communicate with friends, loved ones, etc. Now, same part we have seen very strongly in traditional banks. The new normal, as we are speaking about, marks the end of all this fintech experimentation. Majority of the banks today are closing down branches in US with fewer customers walking in. Social distance, the social distancing norm still very much there. Branch banking is literally ceasing to be efficient. This further backed by the fact that across the world there's an increasing shift towards enabling digital adoption, the digital account opening, etc. And second important part to drive this change has primarily been the growing use of smartphones, affordable data, etc. My next question to you, Ved, from this perspective is, with this rapid change in landscape and digital becoming mainstream, how do you think can fintech startups and digital banks capitalize on this particular shift that we are observing now?
That's a great question, Sanjay. I think at the highest possible level, what I think fintech companies need to do is to make sure that they have their ears close to the ground and they are able to respond to market demands. I think that would be one of the key things that they need to consider. Be very nimble and agile. And I can give you an example. At Razorpay, we realized when the entire lockdown phase started that what we call internally as contactless payments is something that's going to take off in a big way, because consumers, even if they are receiving deliveries as through a COD, for example, they may not be too keen on actually paying through cash. Right? They want to have means for contactless payments. And that's something that we recognized early on, and we doubled down, and we in fact launched an app version of what we call as the EPOS app, right? The electronic point of sale app, which essentially which has multiple manifestations and use cases. One of the use cases is obviously cash on delivery, where the person, instead of just providing one single, so essentially it is a payment link generator. So payment link is one of our products wherein you have the exact same interface of your payment gateway, but the merchants, consumers still have the benefit of using all of the different variety of payment options. They can pay through net banking, UPI, cards, debit card, credit card, the entire works, wallets, whatever it is. Now, Payment Link essentially is a hassle-free, zero-tech integration involved product, right? That's something which we offer. Now, this was offered as part of the mobile app, which could power on-the-go payments. One of the other use cases, just carrying on from that same example as a corollary to what I was saying, something that we have stumbled upon is, in fact, the fact that a lot of traditional brick and mortar retailers have also started using our EPOS app. And this is something that we did through a partnership with one of India's largest POS players. So whenever their POS system is down, or whenever their consumers, for example, want a wider selection of payment instruments to actually pay via, then what happens is they use the EPOS app and they send a payment link to their customers for the customers to actually choose from whichever payment instrument they want to pay via, right? So these are two examples, which attest to the point that I was making earlier, that banks, essentially fintech companies, startups, essentially need to be a lot more nimble, agile, and keep their ears and eyes, fixated on the market dynamics, which are constantly shifting right now. I think these are some points for us to consider.
Interesting. Contactless payment, as you said, that's very interesting. EPOS concept also looks very interesting. And it's absolutely a new norm. Schools, colleges, music, offices, you speak about it. Everyone is moving from offline to online. And of course, the results of this transformation is there are fewer avenues of interaction points that we have. There are those limited specific interaction points digital that we have, and obviously it has to come with quality, and that is what will determine the relationship between, be it fintech, be it banks, with their customers. So Ved, that brings to my next question, like what approaches can financial bank take to tackle this problem? You got my question, right? So because now it's lesser, it's contactless, it's lesser avenues of channels that you can interact with. So how can we tackle this problem, A? And how will financial services and products be shaped in the future to fulfill these kind of customer needs? So that's my next question, Ved, to you.
I think this is related to, so some of what I mentioned to the previous question would also apply here. I think one of the biggest things, as I said, which was one of the biggest impediments for growth for fintech players, for payment ecosystem players, was essentially consumer inertia, and to a certain extent merchant inertia, which was also powered because of consumer inertia. I think we've solved for both of these, business and consumer inertia, basis some of the examples and the data points that I just mentioned. I think those essentially attest to this. Because of COVID, I think that has essentially accelerated a lot of this change. And brands being that much more nimble and agile and dynamic, responding to market needs, I think that will also solve for this. The other example that I can also talk about, which essentially attests to what you were talking about, is at Razorpay, something that I mentioned, right? We also offer something called as a neo-banking suite of solutions, which essentially reinvents the way business banking is done. Wherein we make the entire concept of a brick and mortar bank moot, right? And neobank essentially is a bank which has only a digital facade, right? And we abstract away all of the brick and mortar complexities away from the consumer or from the business. And that is a value proposition, again, apart from obviously our payment gateway and payment link offerings. That is something that has also taken off in a big way, which essentially again points to the fact that a lot of these changes, which possibly might have taken, which are possibly 12, 24 months down the line, they've actually been accelerated because of COVID and constrained into a 2-3 month time frame. From a digital ecosystem perspective. So the market, which was probably 12, 24 months away, has actually now come on board. It's the entire acceleration, the entire change has been accelerated because of COVID.
True. Correct. So, in fact, you have any inputs on this? Like, India is traditionally a lot of, the legacy nationalized banks and then private banks. Private banks are definitely adopting, but what are your take for these kind of banks on how should they be adapting to this new norm?
I think banks have taken a lot of very bold steps towards embracing technology and embracing digital as a whole. I think the RBI has been at the forefront of driving a lot of this innovation. I think, for example, digital KYC for current account opening, I think that is like a significant step in this direction. And as I said, we also have a partner bank in place through whom we also offer the current account solutions in place. And we have also managed to overlay a lot of this digital innovation with the support of our partner bank. And we've been able to pass on that benefit to our businesses who are actually working with Razorpay. I think, as I said, I think banks and RBI have been at the forefront of embracing technology, embracing digital innovation. The digital KYC is a great example, of how banks have been at the forefront of actually, driving this change. I think if you were to look at the overall ecosystem I think UPI is a fantastic example. I think even before COVID, if you were to ask me what has been one of the, reasons for acceleration of digital payments in India, I would say it is UPI, because just through the use of an app which abstracts away all of your financial instrument and your underlying bank account details, you're actually able to pay, which also brings that level of security and seamlessness and ease of use. So I think UPI followed by COVID, both of these have been huge change agents, which has essentially accelerated the adoption of digital ecosystem. On banks per se, I think some of the examples I gave are cases in point. All of these examples, digital KYC, a lot of these have come in the last 3 to 6 months.
Right. Yeah. Great. Hey, wait. So coming back, for all the audiences that we have right now, any 3 key takeaways that you would like to give overall from the perspective of the new norm and post the COVID situation, from fintech perspective, any 3 takeaways that you want to give?
I think one of the things that I would provide, which is more of a business guidance, is in the post-COVID world, you do need, capital is going to be king and it's going to be emperor once again. So you've got to make sure that whatever strategies you come up with are not very cash intensive or not very cash burn intensive. So from a customer acquisition perspective, from a customer engagement perspective, you do need to look for more cost effective growth hacks which can help you acquire more customers and engage with your existing customers in the new normal. And a lot of this will have to be done virtually. right? So that is something that you would need to strive for as a business owner, as a business in this day and age. I think that is something which is very essential. The second thing, as I said earlier, I gave you a couple of examples from Razorpay's case. I think it's very important for you to keep your ears and eyes glued to what is happening in the market. Keep your ears very close to the ground and stay very nimble and agile. Don't have any set patterns in terms of expecting certain things to pan out in a particular way. If 3 months ago somebody had said the world would be where it is now, nobody would have expected that. And we don't know where the world is going to end up 3 months later. So which is why I think it's very important for businesses, fintech and otherwise, to have a very nimble, agile mindset. I think these would be my recommendations, Sanjay.
Sure. And when you said, like you said, like capital is the king, it's going to be new norm for acquisition, engagement is going to play a key role. So you want to throw some more light on this part, engagement part?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thanks for bringing that up. So for example, at Razorpay, and this is true for most businesses as well, especially given that cash conservation is going to be very important. You're not always going to have the flexibility and the freedom purely from a digital acquisition perspective to be able to spend marketing dollars in the Facebooks and the Googles of the world, right? So you do need to look for other avenues for growth. So for example, at Razorpay, we've looked at channel partnership as a very strong mantra that can drive our growth, right? It's more cost effective, it's more scalable, wherein we essentially partner with people in the ecosystem, either large brands like us or small and medium businesses, again, which are talking and speaking to the same TG that we are speaking with, which essentially is smaller medium businesses, right? How can we partner with them and offer a more bundled, holistic value proposition, which might be of interest to SMBs and also has symbiotic mutual benefits for both the partners involved, right? So I think that is a more scalable, cost-effective way for growth. I think these are some avenues. That's an example. This is an example of a more cost-effective, scalable avenue for growth. And this also makes sense because the next wave of growth for a lot of SME businesses and the next wave of growth for a lot of fintech companies which sit on top of a lot of these SMB businesses will actually come from tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and below, right? We are kind of maxing out on the potential which is available from the Bangalore's and the Mumbai's and the Chennai's and the Delhi's of the world. So you do need to look for tier 3, tier 4 and tier 5 below. Every single SMB conference that I visit, my conversations are all local vernacular, right? Every single, the typical, and I hate stereotyping, but the typical persona of your smaller medium business is somebody from a Kota, Rajasthan, somebody who's from a small place, or a Surat in Ahmedabad, somebody who's from a Lucknow, somebody from a Coimbatore, somebody from a Kumbakonam in South India, somebody from a Mandya district in Karnataka. These are the kinds of people who come in, and this will power the next wave of growth. And you can't, and this is not just from, and a lot of these businessmen who come from these places are also servicing the local economy in that particular place. Right, so it's not just merchants, but the actual consumers are also coming from these places, which essentially means that if you are a fintech company, you need to have the toolkits in place to be able to acquire and go after these kinds of businesses. And digital alone, Facebook and Google alone will not cut it. Right, so you do require other ways to actually reach out to these people. A case in point, channel partnerships.
Got it. And you mentioned about persona localization, if I'm not wrong. I heard that from you.
So what I meant was a lot of these businesses service and sell to consumers who are based in that local economy.
Correct.
Right. So if you have a person who's coming in from a Surat, he is servicing consumers who are from that local economy. Some of these startups also service international clients, of course, but a lot of these businesses also service consumers who are from that locality as well.
And this you are driving all digitally, centrally, right?
So, absolutely. All of this is being, so these merchants are selling these solutions, products, etc. For example, there is a startup that we recently onboarded, something that I also mentor, which essentially provides farm to plate kind of a solution in Ahmedabad. So if you are living in and around Ahmedabad and you want to have access to fresh produce, which was harvested 6 to 8 hours prior only, right? You want it that fresh and you want it delivered to your home. This is a platform that can actually allow you to do that, right? So that's an example of the kind of businesses that are coming up. And as I said, and again, talking about these kind of businesses service the economy which is there in that locality.
Right.
Which I think is great news for the overall Indian digital ecosystem, the startup ecosystem, SME ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystem.
Great. Thanks, Shveta. Thanks for those insights. So I would like to open up for questions, and I think I have a first question from Akriti Jain, which says that with the recent Supreme Court order and the growth of crypto exchanges in the country, what's your view on Razorpay serving and facilitating crypto transactions? That's an interesting and different question. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we've been discussing this internally as well. As of now, we haven't received a specific guidance on the legality of facilitating cryptocurrency transactions in India. That is still in a bit of a gray zone, and we always like to be a little more conservative when it comes to following norms which are in that gray zone. For looking at areas which are in that gray zone of legality. So unless, and this is a space that we are watching closely, we do realize that there is a lot of latent pent-up demand in the country, towards crypto. So as a business, we are still pretty conservative. We are waiting and watching the space. And I do believe that in the next possibly, and I think we were possibly making some strong strides towards crypto before COVID actually came in, which possibly put a spanner in the works. But I think once hopefully things settle down with regards to COVID and the country is able to bounce back on its feet, I think this is something that the RBI this financial year for sure will pass some strong regulations on and will make it crystal clear on what side of the law crypto actually falls on.
Yeah, and I know, like, I guess if I'm not wrong, early Feb is when, or mid Feb is when Supreme Court kind of gave it as a legal go ahead for all kind of crypto exchanges. Akriti is coming up with some more questions on the same. Says that since you have seen a growth in gaming, that's what you said, right? A lot of new merchants in the game tech industry. Would you look towards the areas of flat crypto on ramps because the gaming market has a lot of tokenized offerings?
So from a crypto perspective, I think the response that I gave earlier applies. I think there are a lot of very interesting opportunities. Once crypto becomes completely legalized and there is crystal clear clarity on what side of the law crypto falls in. But just with regards to gaming itself, there are multiple use cases why gaming merchants come to us. One is on the receivable side, wherein they actually want to receive payments from their customers, which could be subscription payments. Some of our gaming merchants are subscriptions clients, right? So for them, they want to make sure that they receive a particular subscription payment on a recurring basis from their customers. The other thing is they use our payouts offering to be for rewards redemption, right? And then for points redemption for their gaming clients. That is the other use case. So one is on the receivable side and the other is on the payout side.
Okay. Akriti asks one more question saying that, are you looking to consider opening up to this, or you will wait for the regulations to be more concrete?
Yes, absolutely. This is the latter. We would want the regulations to be a lot more concrete. We are watching the space. It is a high interest space, and we do believe that it can significantly take off in India. But I think the legality angle needs some clarification still. It is still in that gray zone.
Right. So while I wait for more questions, interestingly, I have a question. So now you said it was a new norm. You saw, lots of, merchant acquisition coming from tier 2, tier 3 cities, etc. What are the challenges that you have faced in the recent time in the new norm, and of course working from home and then addressing, I'm sure you would have, like when we speak about banks, right? Banks, I know the fact that I had BFSI, I keep talking to this financial vertical, and a lot of times these people were saying that, well, thanks Akriti. A lot of times these people say that, hey Sanjay, we are very busy, we have to do those changes in the moratorium, now government has come back 3 more months to be added to moratorium, etc. A lot of helter-skelter running around, making those changes to the core systems and all. Now when it comes to Razorpay, from your experience perspective, I'm sure you would have also done some changes, like you spoke about personal localization, right? And so many things where you have been trying to create. You spoke about EPOS, right, which you have been leading. So what are those challenges during the current times to, quickly adapt to such, new products, new services, and at the same time being able to, engage with your merchants, with your customers, etc.?
I think it's a great question, Sanjay, and multiple kinds of challenges that have cropped up. One is purely from an internal perspective, adjusting to the norm of working from home and working remote, and still making sure that we all stay productive and keep our mental and physical health. Keeping all of that shipshape, I think that's been a big challenge. I think from an enterprise business perspective, a lot of large enterprises, it took them some time to actually adjust to this new normal of working style, of establishing, because a lot of the enterprise sales, for example, are high touch selling, right? Wherein the sale is, and as you would know at MoEngage, a lot of these sales are high touch selling, which is closed in a lot of cases in person. So, adjusting to this new normal, both internally for the sales teams and for the clients, I think that was a little bit of an adjustment, but things have been proceeding in the right direction. Now, from an SMB perspective, something that we had to pivot and adjust to is something that I've alluded to earlier, right? So we realized that growth at all costs mindset can't really be followed. I think we need to make sure that we're a lot more conservative with our growth plan. So something that we have pivoted and focused on is we're not completely focused on performance and paid marketing alone for driving our growth. We've also decided to double down and focus a lot more on organic growth, SEO-led growth, focusing a lot more on making sure that our retention numbers are as high as possible, focusing a lot more on cross-selling efforts to make sure that our existing customer base, how can we make them that much more hardworking, and how can we sell other products which are also a part of our entire portfolio. That's something which has also been a conscious focus. The other thing that we've also focused on, something that I mentioned earlier, is channel partner-led growth. Right, that's also been a significant focus for us. So these have been some challenges, and this is how we've responded to them.
Great. Sounds very interesting. So, in fact, I'll just see if there are some more audience questions, or else. Yeah, I think so. That's good. We don't have any more audience questions, and thanks, Ved, for sharing all these interesting insights. And I've actually enjoyed conversation, and hope that all the viewers are also feeling the same. And you found this particular session useful. Do share this live feed, with your network, and don't forget to follow our LinkedIn page. As I said, hashtag breaking new ground. And I'll just wait for Aarti to check if there are any questions. Aarti, okay, no more questions from. Yeah, so in fact, I don't mind taking one last takeaway from you before I end this session with.
I think as I said, the biggest takeaway is. I think if I had to just say summarize, one is make sure that you conserve your capital, spend it on things that are only most essential to spend. I don't know how many of you love Game of Thrones. That famous line, "Winter is coming," is actually true. Winter is already here, and we don't know how long it's going to last. So make sure that you do conserve capital. That is one. The second thing is, I think there are a lot of, at Razorpay, we've seen a lot of very, very strong lead indicators which are pointing to the fact that the overall SMB entrepreneurial and the economy in India is on its path to recovery. We've seen some numbers, very strong recovery signs in the month of May, which essentially paints a very encouraging picture as we look ahead to the rest of the year. I think that's something which is very important for us to consider. The other big takeaway for me is stay nimble, stay agile, keep your ears and eyes glued to what's happening in the market, and don't go in with preconceived notions. These will be the key takeaways.
Great. And just like the way you said, like post-COVID, things should come out more stronger. Really look forward to that kind of future that we see. And thanks once again, Ved. Hey, everyone, don't forget to follow us in LinkedIn. And as I said, hashtag breaking new ground. And, look forward to see you in our next more episodes. Have a great day ahead. Stay safe. Stay home. Thanks, Ved, once again. Thanks, Aarti.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay. Thank you. A big thank you to the MoEngage team for organizing this and giving me the opportunity. And again, wherever all of our viewers and the audience are, stay safe, stay healthy. Take care of your loved ones. Take care. Bye bye.
Pleasure was ours. Thank you so much, Ved.
Thank you. Likewise.